Hey, what's going on, everybody? I appreciate you, first of all, for taking the time out just to join me and hear what I had to say. I appreciate it so much. It doesn't matter what social media outlet that you're joining, whether it's Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. I appreciate you taking the time out just to stop by and hear what I had to say. I promise I won't hold you long. Now, there may be a lot of you who are saying, I stopped by because I was just curious. I wanted to see who he was. For a lot of you, you may not ever heard of me or seen me. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jairrod A.Burch. I am an influencer. I am an expert empowerment speaker. I am the CEO of Value on Purpose. That's my company, in which I use my platform for speaking, consulting, and coaching, and I speak into the lives of many around the country, around the world, and I speak to them on the power of knowing their value. So what I want to do today, I have a subject I want to talk to you about, real brief, but it's very important. So if you can do me a favor when you listen to this, if you can not only listen to this and hear it, but if you can share it, that's the only way that a lot of us can use our influence. And it doesn't cost you anything. Share the message. Help me get it out. I have a message I wanted to talk to you real brief. And the message today I wanted to talk to you about is called Unplug to Reset. That's Unplug to Reset. Many of you may have seen some of my marketing videos concerning this message. It's very powerful. A lot of you need to hear it because a lot of you need to know that you're more than what people have labeled you to be, and you're even more than what you have labeled yourself to be. That's Unplug to Reset. Now, this message is for everybody. It doesn't matter what ethnicity, what profession, what cultural background, whatever the case may be. This is for those who know that there is more inside of you. You may not even know what that more looks like. You may not even know what it sounds like, but you know what it feels like when you feel that unction, that pulling inside, that's letting you know you're functioning, but you're not flourishing just yet. Give me at least about 20-25 minutes of your time, and I'll help you understand what that is. So this message is entitled Unplug to Reset. Recently, I spoke in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I was speaking on a message entitled, I Am an Influencer. That message was basically talking about the power of your influence. Understanding that you are not just one thing. A lot of times people like to label you or limit you, confine you to something that they're comfortable with. But just because it makes them comfortable doesn't mean that it's correct. So I was speaking to them on the subject, I am an influencer. One of the biggest things that we have to understand, knowing that we have a greater purpose, knowing that we have a responsibility, and knowing that we are influencers, is that the first thing that you're going to have to battle and to have to go up against and have a challenge is the way that you think, your mentality. It's going to challenge you, because once you get past and battle and defeat the way that you think of yourself in a negative way, then you'll be able to conquer how someone else on the outside thinks of you. But it's only until you understand what's going on in here, that's when you'll understand your influence, and your purpose. I was talking to them about limiting their mindset, specifically when it comes to us as believers, Christians, letting them know that we were not designed to be confined to a religious mentality that says you can only be used in these four walls, or this organization, or just around folks that are familiar with you, or just around people who are in your culture, things that are comfortable. That was never your design. That was never my design. Learn how to not become confined or held hostage to a belief system that only allows you to display yourself in presentation, but not utilize you fully in your purpose as an asset to the world and not just to your surroundings. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Stick with me. I shared with them about how I grew up. I grew up in Canton, Ohio. I was the youngest of all boys. It was 5 of us. And we were all ministers, all called to preach, all called to teach, including mom and dad. So my younger years, between 7 and 15, I like to call that my foundation years, my foundation season. Around that time, when I was growing up, one of my first influences on my life was, other than my parents, was a woman by the name of Pastor Barbara J. Wynn. Little older lady, always dressed sharp. One of the nicest women that you could meet, but she was one of the toughest women spiritually that I have ever seen. The foundation that she laid and the influence that she had on my life, she spoke and taught and lived about faith. Faith, having faith in God, not just in your mouth, not just lip service, but having faith in God and living it out. Remember, these are my foundation years, growing up in church, learning foundation, learning traditions, learning upbringings, things like that. Some of it was good, but some of it was not so good. So around this time, this was a very influential stage. Just like some of you, you've grown up in church, or you've grown up just like me in a place to where when you're growing, everything is, I don't want to say sheltered, but it's groomed. You're groomed in a certain way to think, how to present yourself, how to act. There were some great things, but then there were some things that were not so great that I found out growing up, that it was not pushing me towards my destination. It was more or less preventing me. Stick with me. 7 to 15, these are my foundation years. Let's go from 15 to 28. Stretch that out. So from 7 to 15, my foundation, growing up in church, learning responsibility, learning who I am, things like that, being taught faith, being taught how to conduct myself, being taught a lot of things that went on within the church. Now let's fast forward to the age 15 to about 28. This is what I like to call foundation versus substance. Foundation versus substance. The reason why I call that is because we hear so much about the foundation is the greatest part of anything, any relationship, anything that's starting out, any building. If you're building something, the foundation is the strongest and the most important part. I agree to some extent, but this is why I call this part of my life from 15 to 28, 25, foundation versus substance. Because to me, it is not the foundation that gives what you are building credibility. To me, it is the substance of the foundation, that which gives it credibility. In other words, whatever you're building or using as your foundation, what is it made out of? What is the quality of the material that you're using for your foundation? So from the age of 15 to 25, this was a time and period, season of my own personal growth. I started preaching at the age of 25. This was a time of not just growth, but finding out my identity, finding out who I was. A season where also God started to pull on the hunger that he placed inside of me. Started to pull on the thirst that he placed inside of me. Because around this age, I thought, because I was traveling everywhere and I was preaching and I was doing praise and worship, that was the pinnacle of what I should be doing, that was where I was supposed to be going. And I felt like because I was functioning, that I was flourishing. And that's one of the dangerous things, is because I was in a stage where I was comfortable, but I wasn't safe. Some of you are right there right now. You feel like because you're comfortable, that you're safe. You feel like because you're operating, that you're doing and operating in your calling and in your purpose. You feel like because you're functioning, that you're flourishing. I'm here to let you know that there's more. Listen. So God placed a hunger inside of me. And he started to let me know, Jairrod, I've got more for you. This is not all that there is for you, but it's going to require you something to come and find out what it is. So I started to really seek God and ask him for more. I started to ask him for more. I didn't even know what more looked like. I didn't know what it sounded like, but I knew what it felt like. I would be in services where it was jam-packed. I was done ministering, and I would sit down in the pulpit while everybody's going crazy. And I would be like, you mean to tell me this is it? That this is all that there is to it? That this is... I was feeling that more. I was feeling that tug. I was feeling that thirst. And anything that was pseudo, that was false, that was artificial, it wasn't getting it. God had to take me from a religious mindset that had borders and limitations on my vision to say, Jairrod, I need to show you more. I need to show you that it's not just about preaching, but it's about reaching. But I don't want you to do it your way. I want you to do it mine. And I knew that there was something more. And I'll never forget the last conversation that I had face to face with my mentor. He told me in an office, he said, Jairrod, there is no more that I can pour into you. He said, your spirit is greater than mine. He said, the type of anointing that you have on you, it's greater than mine. And I have only seen maybe 3 people with it. I understood to a degree, but because God had already been dealing with me about, take your eyes off of what you're seeing around you and start putting it on me, because I don't just see what's in front of you. I see what's ahead of you. When I had that conversation with him, after we were done, I could understand it, but I didn't know the next steps. And some of you, you're holding on to what you used to and what feels comfortable, what feels familiar, because you don't want to let go, because you don't know what the next step is. I'm here to tell you, it's okay to let go. I want to give you these 5 things that you will experience. We're talking about unplug to reset. I'm going to give you these 5 things that I went through that let me know that it was time for me to unplug so that I can be reset. Number 1, uprooting. It was the uprooting. What do you mean by that, Jared? The feeling of where I was no longer satisfied in my spirit and in my heart. I was willingly pulling away my affection and my attention from everything that did not match that hunger to be deeper with God. I was pulling away. I was being uprooted. And I knew where I was, both spiritually and naturally. It was only a matter of time before it consumed me, because I was ready. It was like I was frustrated. I was angry, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew that there had to be more. And I knew, and one thing that I want to say, I would have never walked into my yes until I first learned how to say no. I'll say that again. A lot of you, you'll never find your yes until you first learn how to say no and mean it. When I told people, no, I've got more gifts inside of me. I can't let you just use me in this one thing. I know I have more inside of me. And it wasn't saying no to be nasty, but it was saying no to be necessary. Because until you say no, you will completely and always be a prisoner and a hostage to other people's expectations and their limits. And it is a sin to be great when you were called to be greater. So that was number 1, the uprooting. Here's number 2. Number 2 was the unplugging. I was not only distancing myself from things that had me and people that did not mirror or reflect my longing for more and deeper in God, but I also started to disconnect as well. I didn't want it. The whole religious thing, just the systematic thing of just doing stuff just to do it, or doing it because I was talented, doing it just because I was anointed, doing it because I was gifted. I was tired of folks loving my gift more than they loved me. And a lot of times we have a habit, those of us who are gifted, where we go where we are needed and we stay where we're needed. I had to be reprogrammed to understand. I had to understand that you go where you're needed, but you stay where you're valued. This was the unplugging. And at this time, I knew it was time for me to go ahead and release. In fact, a lot of you are probably at this stage. And how you'll know is people will start to let you know. Oh, you funny now. Oh, you can't answer no more calls. You ain't coming out to hang with us. You're not coming out to us, but to every concert or every conference or you're distancing yourself. It's not like you're becoming an island to yourself, but you're being pulled away because God is pulling you deeper into Him, okay? That's the unplugging. And I was willing to be unplugged, because a lot of us think that because of the thing that we are plugged to and attached to, that's the thing that's giving us power. When in actuality, the thing that we are plugged into is the thing that is preventing us from our purpose. Please catch that. That was number 2, the unplugging. Number 3, resetting. God started to deal with me concerning my purpose, my influence, and my destiny once I was unplugged. He started revealing to me who I was by design and not who I became by default. I had become comfortable for a while in my environment, and I became comfortable because my environment, and not only my environment, but my gifts told me, you good right here. Never be led by your gifts and your talents. Never be driven by them. They were given to you as tools so that God could lead you to your purpose. But don't allow it to make a home where you were only supposed to make a pit stop. You understand? So that was the resetting, and this was a very important time, because it was when God took me from just thinking that I was only a preacher, only could praise and worship leader, only a teacher, only could do these things, to saying, Jairrod, I'm going to show you what I designed you for. You're an influencer. I've enlarged your territory. Come see. So that was the resetting. That's when God started to take my religious mind and transform it, and took my mind from a religious mindset to a one-track mindset, to taking me to a global mindset and a heart of relationship. Number 4, this was the reloading. This is where God started to give me a fresh download of who I was. Let me show you. Started to deal with me about my influence and my impact. So in 2015, that's when I started my company, Value on Purpose. This is where I not only started the company, Value on Purpose, where I'm speaking, consulting, and coaching many from different professions, walks of life, cultures, on their value. But this is also where I started to see my influence. On the other side of my comfort was me being able to start and launch the Speak Into My Life show, where my podcast show got picked up from a company and a station in South Carolina and broadcasted to 12 different nations. This was on the other side of my mindset and being unplugged and allowing God to reset me. This is where I partnered with NFL star Dwight Johnson, and with the organization endorsed by Michael Strahan, Hall of Famer, the Big Man Takeover Camp, where I was able to speak into the lives of young high school football athletes going into universities and going into the college years, letting them know that it's not just what you do on the field that's important. It's what you do when the whistle's done being blown and you walk out of that locker room. This is where God started to show me it's not just about being in the 4 walls of the church, but it's about having an influence that can touch the 4 corners of the earth. This is where I launched my first book, The Impact Kit, and co-authored another book entitled The Daughter of a King. This is where I launched and co-founded an organization called Worthy from the Womb, a women's empowerment movement. This is where I also started the Value Academy, creating leadership and curriculums and trainings for corporations and companies and businesses, and being able to bridge the gaps between management and employee. Do you see what I'm saying? I would never have been able to think or fathom if I did not let God unplug me, to reset me, to find out that I wasn't just one thing, but wrapped up, I was an influencer. This is where I began to have professionals from various professions contact me and ask me for advice, counsel, both professional and private, being able to private coach athletes, entrepreneurs, business men and women, business owners, up and coming models, actors. I was able to do all of this because I allowed God to unplug me from the source that I thought I was getting power from, but it was really preventing me. It was my mindset. And not just my mindset, but I allowed him to uproot me because it was also my environment as well. Number 5, reposition. Because I was now exposed to the level of influence that I had over my life. So I was no longer comfortable allowing someone else to confine me and restrict me to their false expectations for my life. I was now moving from levels to dimension because it was about influence, being able to make an impact on not just the world around me, but the world that I live in. Because I now understood and I knew my value as an influencer had so much more purpose that it repositioned the way that I saw myself. When you change the way that you see yourself, you'll change the way that people treat you and how they view you, how they interact with you. Because when you know your value and you open your eyes, you not only know who you are, but you find out who people are not. All of this was on the other side of being unplugged and allowing God to reset me. So I'm just challenging you. You may not know everything and what it looks like, but you feel it. I need to be unplugged. That's what he's talking about. I need to be unplugged. This is not a church thing. This is about your purpose, no matter what profession. Maybe you're a businessman. Maybe you're in a corporation and you're functioning, but you're not flourishing because you know you've been called to do greater. And you're hiding. You're hiding because you feel like activity is productivity. But I'm here to let you know it's time for you to be unplugged so that God can reset you. Listen, hit that share button. This is Jairrod A.Burch, the influencer, Mr. Value. Just here to let you know. I know how it feels. I know what it feels like. I know what you're going through. But I'm telling you, on the other side of your fear is a greater calling and a greater purpose. I told you I wouldn't take too much of your time. Hit me up. Let me know. Share this. But let me know if this video helped you in any type and kind of way. I love you guys. I'll see you soon.